Thank you all so much for tuning in today. I'm really excited to dive into this office hours, both to learn all about how we can leverage company culture in order to propel business forward, and also because a core goal of Dreamers and Doers is to amplify you and the work you do. And one of the ways we achieve this is by facilitating these game-changing educational events that give us all the opportunity to up level together. So before we officially dive in, I want to share a bit of background information on our esteemed expert. Jess is the co-founder and CEO of LLUNA, an HR tech platform that enables personalized employment. She has a background in management consulting with deep expertise in organizational effectiveness, culture curation, and change management. Helping companies realize their true culture in creative ways is her superpower, and a big part of her mission is to personalize the future of work. So, with that, I will hand it over to you, Jess. We are so excited to learn from you and your expertise today. We know how valuable your time is, and we're so grateful to you for investing in the Dreamers and Doers Collective in this way. And in terms of logistics, as far as questions go, Jess wants this to be a discussion. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, unmute yourself, raise your hand, and then we can go ahead and dive straight in.
Awesome. I am thrilled to be here today talking with all of you. Culture is far and away one of my favorite topics of conversation, and I've spent decades studying culture as part of my work as a management consultant and now as the leader of LLUNA, a SaaS technology focused on personalized employment. So thank you for having me. I'm going to dive right in and definitely want to call out that if you have questions, just unmute and jump in with them, or you can drop them in the chat. I'll try to pay attention to that. But yeah, please, let's make it conversational along the way. So topics we're going to cover today. Why is culture a priority? We'll just touch on this. I think most of you are probably here because you know it is, but we'll dig into that a little bit. Then we'll just talk about what is culture and the way that I like to define it to try to bring some clarity and context to how to approach it and how to use it to propel your business forward. Building your culture foundation, kind of what are those components and how can you think about them to put them in place? How to win with culture, and ultimately we'll talk a little bit about culture in a hybrid world. Again, if you have any topics that you want to cover that I'm not hitting on, just throw them in the chat or unmute and let me know. We can go there too. So why is culture a priority? When companies focus on, and when leaders focus on building and managing a healthy culture, it leads to tangible business results. There are volumes and volumes of research now. Years ago, it used to be harder to find this data, but today you can barely open up a newsfeed without seeing something that talks about how culture and engagement is really driving business results. So, by intentionally building and managing your own culture for your company or for your team, you have the potential to drive earnings, profitability, productivity. It really leads to all these great things because your people are engaged, and ultimately that means your culture is channeling the right things in the right way. I am going to ask you to be interactive here for one moment, and I'm going to ask if you don't mind, bear with me, but throw in the chat just a company that you think of that has a great culture right now. So as any company, there's no right or wrong answers, but when you think of good company cultures, what do you? Yeah, I used to think Google, but not anymore. Jade, thank you. Some are on the list and then off the list and on the list again. Any other thoughts from the crew? Elvest, love that one. I love what they're doing, especially with their really dedicated female focus. Starbucks, yep. Zero, how they work with their partners. Great ones. So there are a lot of really good companies out there, and I'm putting some more logos up here to some other ideas that might come to mind as really great cultural companies. Yeah, when you think about it, you're like, well, what makes their culture great? And it's sometimes hard to articulate that. It's sometimes hard to be like, well, I don't know, like they offer great perks or great benefits, or they do something unique. But we know that they're recognized as a great company from a cultural standpoint. And then we also know the ones that aren't great. So I'm not going to ask you to throw those in the chat. We'll refrain from throwing them under the bus. But I am going to call one company out here, and that's Uber. Circa 2017 had some major cultural challenges. So they had 47 things that they agreed to change about their company culture. They lost all sorts of dollars, and their president really just had no control over the culture overall. What happened here is the fact that Uber just let the culture take its own shape. There was no management, there was no proactive structure put in place around the culture. It was kind of the wild, wild west, and they liked that. That ultimately became what the culture was, but it wasn't scalable, it wasn't manageable, and it wasn't something that really bred or cultivated a positive place to work. So when you think about the logos on the former slide, those are all companies that are intentionally thinking about how they manage culture. And Uber, while they now might be doing things a little bit better, had a period of time at least where they were off the rails, so to speak, and weren't intentionally focused on managing the culture that was in the business. And so I transition from that to share that culture really does permeate all aspects of the employee experience, that employee life cycle. Everything from attracting talent all the way through to separation. Your culture plays a role. And when you are intentionally defining it, managing it, really feeding it, it can do really great things to drive performance in your business, to make teams have better productivity, better engagement, happier employees. It leads to all sorts of positive benefits overall. I'm gonna just check the chat here for a second. Yes. Refuse to use them after their SVP of marketing said they'll threaten journalists. Yeah, Uber has had a rough ride. But so when you're thinking about culture for your organization, make sure you're thinking about it across the continuum of employees. It's not just your ping pong tables and your lunches, although that tends to be the kind of easy and fun thing to discuss. It really is embedded into all of your processes across that employee life cycle. Keep going here. So what is culture? In the simplest of terms, I have spent years and years trying to perfect this story or this formula. But the simplest way to describe it is culture equals values plus behaviors. So when you think about that, those are the values of your organization and the behaviors that support those values. That is what shapes your culture. So as you're thinking about maybe where you work currently or the company that you're building, focus on what are our values, what behaviors do we want to have in place to support those values, and how is that going to create the culture that we want as a team or as a company. And so in order to build that culture foundation, there's really three parts. The first is, and you probably all have this or know this for the organization that you're a part of, but why do you exist? Why are you doing this? This is your North Star or your purpose. And this one is very important. It's critically important actually right now because a lot of employees are reflecting on where they want to be spending their time, how they want to be spending their time. And so connecting to the purpose of an organization is critical. So you want to make sure you understand, why do you exist? Why do we do this? That is your purpose. And then the next piece is to really ask the question, what do we care about? What do we value as an organization? And these are your values. These are the things that should form your core values. Then the third piece is defining how you show up. So what are the actions or behaviors that bring your values to life? So purpose, values, behaviors. That purpose is should be really a constant for your organization. That North Star, that lighthouse is really not typically doesn't waver and doesn't change. That is a kind of constant part of your org. Your values also will rarely change. So once you've established core values, they, for the most part, will stay consistent throughout the life cycle of your company, with exception at times. Sometimes you're like, wow, we really need a new value, or we want to change some language. And I can talk a little bit about that later. The behaviors, how you show up, could change over time. So sometimes the forces that change that are remote work, or a new kind of arm of your business that has a different type of resource that you're now interacting with. So you want to kind of consistently revisit those behaviors and make sure that they are reflecting how the whole company and your whole purpose can be accomplished. But they do sort of all stack on each other. So the purpose at the top, then your values, and then your behaviors to support the values. I'm going to go into an example next. I'm just checking the chat to make sure there's no questions. All right, so let's see this in action with a real example. I've taken Southwest, and a company certainly known for their culture. And their purpose is to connect people to what's important in their lives through friendly, reliable, and low-cost travel. Okay, so that's their North Star. And then they have these 6 values that they've divided into the live the Southwest way and work the Southwest way, which I just love. I think that this is a really creative way to put this framework together. And their 6 values are these bolded phrases. So values can be one word, they can be a phrase, a little sentence. You don't have to be confined if you're trying to shape values for your organization. It doesn't, there's no right or wrong answer. It's what works for your particular culture, your unique culture. And then the behaviors that support the values are the 3 bullets under each of those bolded phrases. So under warrior spirit, it's strive to be the best self. So that's a behavior. That's an expectation of people working inside the organization. Display a sense of urgency. So if you are not displaying a sense of urgency, your manager might be able to say, hey, we pride ourselves on displaying that sense of urgency. That's our warrior spirit. What's going on with you? How can we get you back into that frame of mind? So the behaviors support the values, which all supports the purpose. And I'm going to just check again and see if anybody's on the chat. Nope. Okay. So this is the LLUNA framework. So this is my company's framework that we created. Our purpose is to create harmony between work and life. Our values spell a word. They spell fresh. So we talk about our fresh take on culture and on work life. And then we have a we statement that's really defining the behaviors for each of the values. So again, I share these 2 examples to show it doesn't all have to look the same, and every company has some combination of these things typically. But I've tried to really codify it in a way that's easy to put it on paper if you're trying to establish it for your team. And certainly if you have it already as part of maybe a bigger organization, this can be a new way to look at what's already in place and use it with your team to say, okay, how can we really rally around this culture framework in a way that's going to make us stronger and work better and achieve great things together. So how does this work day to day? You've got your culture components, the purpose, we talked about why we exist. in your day-to-day, you might say, okay, like, does this business strategy or approach connect to our purpose? Is this helping me to create harmony between work and life? That's a question I ask myself often. If not, it might not make sense to pursue that particular strategy. So you want to stay consistent with your purpose, that being your North Star. And then the values, the way they show up, think of values as that like backbone to your organization. They're like that spine holding everything together. And they're going to serve as filters for decision making. So when you're going to make decisions as an organization, you want to be able to say, okay, is this aligned with our values? Is this part of our culture framework to help us kind of stay true to our culture and continue to grow as a business? So, how should I behave in this situation would be tying back to your values and the behaviors that support them. Another great way to look at this too is to think about like, why might have someone taken certain actions? Maybe your initial instinct is to react and be like, why would you do that? Or like, oh my gosh, like you just ruined everything. And, but if you pause and say like, okay, well, maybe they were using the values. Maybe that person, LLUNA value is empathy. So maybe that person was really taking extra time. I'm wondering why something isn't finished. They're taking extra time to reflect on a different perspective and how it might work for one of our segments or a particular audience, what the downstream impacts are. And so when you pause to say, why might people be behaving the way that they're behaving, and you use your values as a filter for that, it helps to almost assume those best intentions and say, I know you must have been reflecting on something as part of our culture framework. Help me understand better, or let's kind of talk it through. So some of the ways it shows up. It's not like this, which is my favorite funny little cartoon. So I want the public to think of us as a company with heart, but I want you to think of us as a company that will chew you up, spit you out, and smear you into the carpet if you screw up. So back in the old days, maybe this was something that got by, but no longer. Culture needs to be consistent both internally as well as externally in order to work and be effective. Hannah, I'm glad you like it. All right. So how to win with culture. Couple thoughts here. So the first one is being relentless about your focus on purpose as your North Star. So that really you need to kind of keep bringing it back to the purpose. And you're going to feel like at some point you're over communicating it or you're leaning on purpose too much. And I'm here to tell you that you're not. You actually cannot do it too much. The more you can tie back to the purpose and the reason that you're doing the work that you're doing, the more you're going to inspire employees, the more you're going to bring people into the fold and make them feel critically important to that purpose. And that's what you want. You want people on the team that are like, we have to do this together. We are in this to really achieve this purpose or work towards this purpose. The second one there is use values as filters for decision making, especially when it's hard. Think about some of the hard decisions that come up. Firing people, or maybe it's walking away from a client. It's revenue that you're saying goodbye to, but there's a value-driven reason for doing that. That's focused on the way that you want to work, how you want to work, and what you value as an organization. So think of them as filters for decision making and lean into it when it feels extra hard. It's easy to be like, all right, like we'll just make it work. We'll just keep going. We'll keep chugging along. But that's actually when you should be saying, let's make the hard decision here because it's going to be better for the long run. Embed culture across all aspects of the employee experience. So, in that hiring process, you're talking about your culture, what you value, the behaviors and expectations that you have of your team to make sure that people that are joining are like, yeah, I can add to this. I'm going to be a valuable asset to this organization, and I like what they say. Or, the performance management that you have, maybe you want to help people learn, you want to help people grow. How does that show up, and how is it connected to your values? So think about all those aspects of the employee experience. I mentioned separation earlier. That one is often like, you feel like you're like, everyone just wants it to be over when you get to that point. But think instead about creating alumni, people that are moving on from your organization as, other evangelists for your great company. Maybe they outgrew something, they needed to go somewhere else to learn something new. But what you want them to carry with them is, wow, that company had a great culture. I feel like the people are incredible. And while I might not still work there, everyone I talk to about them, I'm going to say good things. And then conduct regular culture tune-ups. So regularly, this could be quarterly, it could be once a year. It's, maybe it's on your strategic planning cadence, or however you want to kind of embed it into your existing processes. But focus on that, like, culture tune-up. So how are we doing as a team, or how are we doing as a company with regards to our values, with regards to the behaviors that support them, and to our purpose? And that's where you might say, wow, maybe there's something new or different that we need to add into the expectations of behaviors. We've learned something as we grew to that, like, next stage as a business. So let's make sure we're framing that out appropriately within our culture foundation, our culture framework, so we can set expectations with our team, and make sure that everybody's really focused on building and strengthening the culture overall. In terms of the hybrid factor, so the idea of a tune-up is really important here. I'm seeing a lot of this right now at companies, because they're like, whoa, we're all working in different places. We had like in-office processes. Now we're trying to figure out how we work with multi-location teams. What do meetings look like? What's going to happen when more people are back in the office, but we still have some people that are remote? And so some of those cultural norms are behaviors that you want to have. So maybe a behavior is focused on really inclusive, collaborative meetings. And if that's the behavior that you expect, then you're setting up technology and processes to really enable that as part of the culture overall. Meeting starters right now, I think, you can call them energizers, you can call them icebreakers. There's all sorts of fun names for them, but I love starting meetings with say something you really admire. Like, let's all pick on Morgan in this meeting, and let's all say something we really admire about Morgan. And all of a sudden, Morgan feels showered with this, like, love and appreciation. And you walk away from that meeting feeling more connected to people, because you're like, oh, wow, I didn't know they admired that about me. And people feel good about making someone else feel good. And then maybe the next meeting you pick on somebody else. Or even you just ask people to share, like, a recent win or a hurdle that they've experienced. So you're shaving off just maybe a few minutes at the beginning of a meeting to connect on that human level before you dive into, like, the task at hand. So it can be a really simple way to stay culturally connected. And you can even I often do like a values in action. Like, which value are you feeling is, like, the biggest priority for you right now? Is it freedom? Is it resourcefulness? Is it empathy, simplicity, happiness? And so my team will say, like, wow, I'm really focused on happiness right now, or I'm really focused on resourcefulness. I have this big, hairy problem in front of me. And we can talk about the values in that context. So that's a simple and very effective way of staying connected. And then even assigning, like, peer-to-peer buddies is something that I have seen work really well. You can come up with more clever names for this, but the idea that, like, maybe for a quarter, you have a person that you're intentionally meant to connect with only for, like, a virtual cup of coffee or in-person cup of coffee, whatever it might be. with some regularity, and you're just like learning more about each other. So many people have joined companies and never met anyone in person in the last 2 years. So creating like those, they might feel almost somewhat forced at first. But if connection is important to you as part of a culture, then it's a great way to just say, hey, spend a little time with this person and get to know them. Jade, yeah, virtual coffee. Our company is split between New York and Spain. There you go. So maybe everyone has a kind of cross-Atlantic buddy that they're meeting with some regularity. Another thing that I've seen work really well is setting expectations with every new hire that they need to reach out like cold to 5 or 10 or whatever the number is, other people in the organization that aren't a part of their team. And so they just need to reach out. The whole company is expecting it. So it's not like someone's like, why is this person from, a random other office or random other department emailing me? Instead, the expectation is set and you're creating opportunities for connections with one another. Second bullet there, communicate even more, guided by purpose and values. I love communications. Sometimes I even get to the point where I'm like, oh my gosh, is this enough? Like, are we done? Are we done? Have we, like, we've already said this. We've said this 1,000 times. Do we need to say it again? And yes, you need to say it again. So always go back to your purpose, your values, paint the picture, that inspiration for people, and connect back to the why you are making business decisions based on that purpose and those values. And you can do this if you're the most senior leader, or if you're a member of a huge organization. You don't have to be quote unquote in charge to execute this. You basically need to be able to say, our purpose as a company is this, these are our core values, and we are charged with the following work. Here's why we're going to get it done the way we're going to get it done, and here's how we're going to do it together. And then the last piece here, ensure leaders understand the individual working styles of their team. This is something that Luna's done a lot of research on, and we continue to see aha moments with our customers about like, oh my gosh, that was so simple, but it shouldn't have taken a tech platform for it to come to life. And what I'm talking about here are questions like, how do you like to receive feedback? When do you do your best thinking? When do you prefer to have meetings? How frequently do you want your manager to check in with you? How do you like to be contacted best? Do you like chat? Do you like email? Do you like text? Understanding those basic things about people's working styles will help you as a team member and as a leader better understand how to engage them the best, to lean into their strengths, tap into like all the things that they can offer to the organization, and do it in a way that's really on their terms. Those are very pondering. This is my last slide, and then we can just kind of chat for a little bit. I'll leave you with this quote from Peter Drucker. You've probably heard it before, but culture does eat strategy for breakfast. I say lunch and dinner as well, because it really is the core foundation to what you need to put in place for your team or for your company. The strategy builds on top of that, and then the execution builds on that. And you need people to be able to deliver the work that you're doing. And in order to motivate them, you need a strong and well-managed culture to do it. I'm going to open it up. Everyone can unmute, and I would love to hear any questions you have. How can I help you figure out maybe a challenge you're working through today?
Yeah, I'll go first. So I'd love it if you could talk. So when you're talking about the values, the example you gave seemed to be very internally focused. And like, I know a lot of people talk about values and like having that being externally focused, and like, this is what your customers can expect of you.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like, would it be weird to have just like employee values and then
Yes.
like customer values, and like there's going to be some overlap, but they're actually two different things, it's sounding like.
They aren't two different things. Let me share again, and I'll talk through. This is a great question, and one I get quite a bit. So Southwest values are on their website. They're available for everyone to see. And what is great about the transparency of these may feel internally focused, but as a customer, you should understand who and what you might be interacting with as part of the Southwest organization. So if you are at a Southwest counter and someone is kind of moving pretty slow and not showing any kind of initiative, they're not displaying that sense of urgency. That would be counter to their values. And now you know that as a stakeholder, as someone who's a customer of them. So I think that there's always value in, the values of the company can have a lens on all stakeholders. It can be more internally focused, but I'm a big believer in companies that have a people first mindset, that kind of focus first on their people, are going to again see those big results, because ultimately then their people are happy, their people deliver great things, and then their customers are happy. It's that kind of ripple effect, if you will. I have seen frameworks and created frameworks where there's here's what this purpose means to our shareholders, to our customers, to our employees, to any of the constituents that may interact. I don't recommend having two sets of values. I think it's one set of core values and one set of behaviors. Not everyone publishes the behaviors. So not everybody puts that out there. A lot of people will maybe just it could say like warrior spirit, and then maybe a little sentence about what that means. And then, potentially those bullets are more of an internal document. In the Luna example that I shared, all of this is on our website. So, this is about how we work, but it's also setting the expectations with our customers on what they can expect when they interact with us.
Thanks for that clarification. That's helpful.
Yeah, sure. Any other questions?
I have a question. We're all working virtual in like 4 different time zones, so it's very tough. And I'm glad you did a slide on culture working in virtual environments. So thank you for doing that. I've been playing with, and I've heard of a couple teams doing like, blanking on like exactly the name for it, but almost like a check-in at the end of the week, like an anonymous survey that goes out.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that? And if you think that's worthwhile to do, or just any advice on if you'd implement that or how you would?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of like pulse checks.
Yeah.
So pretty regular check-ins, and making it be like a couple of questions, not anything, even one question, like not labor intensive. I'm a little torn on the anonymous side of it, because I think the real value is in if you can get a pulse check on someone, and even if it's how are you feeling this week? Like it's a little bit of just, I'm feeling awesome or I'm feeling rotten. You want to go talk to that person. You want to be able to say like, all right, like, how do I help you? How do I support you in this? So if it's anonymous, sometimes it backfires, because you're like, okay, great. Now I have this information, but now I have no idea how to figure out who it is. And then you're trying to create really one size fits all solutions for maybe that one person that is really struggling. In order for a pulse check to be implemented that isn't anonymous, you need to have good trust in the organization. So that all comes back to the culture, which is, do we have a culture where we trust one another, that we're comfortable sharing how we really feel, and getting and giving feedback and all of those things. So if you feel like you have a good foundation already of trust and, just general like positive working, then I would say implement pulses and don't make it anonymous. Make it like at least the manager has visibility to it.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of on that vein of having multiple people in multiple different time zones and like not being able to do meetings because everyone's not working at the same time. I was curious if you have some of the examples of other things that can happen when you have that asynchronous team going on.
Yeah, so definitely a few ideas there. One is utilizing Loom or any type of video technology to send messages back and forth, or screen share and kind of walk through something and send it back and forth, can be a really great way to work asynchronously so that people aren't skipping beats. It's almost like you're in a meeting together, but you're not. So highly recommend that. I also recommend finding the time where there is overlap. If you can find, like, even if it's a half an hour where everybody happens to still be working, or then and book it and protect it. And don't even use that time necessarily for all like work productivity types of things. Use it as like a forum to highlight what everyone's excited about working on next month, or maybe like celebrating big wins across the team, at least for a portion of that time. So you're connecting everybody, because that will build more trust so that you can work better asynchronously. So I would say look for those pockets where you can connect people and just like very diligently stay true to having that meeting. Don't just like, how we schedule them and then we cancel them. So keep it on the calendar. Make sure you're creating those opportunities for connection. And it doesn't have to be like every week. It could be, maybe it's once a month where you're bringing everyone together for an hour and you're doing, you're breaking it up. We're going to celebrate what we've accomplished. We're going to talk about what we're going to do next. And then we're going to dig into one topic that's been a big problem for us to solve.
I have a question. I'm trying to figure out how to formulate this question. We've run into something kind of weird at our company. So the way that we're set up is New York is all the business team. So I'm based here. And then my co-founder and all the engineering, data science, all those people are in Spain. We like to joke about they got the better city because they're in Madrid. But one of the things that my co-founder worked really hard on is communication, because we're in two different countries, different cultures, and not most of the people in Spain, their first language is not English, although all of them speak English. That's a requirement to work for us. And I think we've done a good job of making sure the business team and the tech team has a really strong relationship and they talk all the time. But recently it's come to my attention from one of the business team leaders that said that we are so positive in the company and we celebrate so much of what everyone has done and how busy the teams are, that sometimes the teams feel intimidated to bring up, not necessarily like this team is not doing their work or they're doing this badly, but sometimes as you grow, processes are not as smooth and they notice like, things that need to be smoothed out, but they sometimes feel that if they bring that up to fix, it might feel to the other team they're pointing fingers, when that is 100% not the intention, because the team is actually doing a wonderful job, but the process needs to change. And I wanted to I'm not sure how to address that, because everyone is also like so happy all the time, and everyone's always like, great job. And so when people want to improve things, they feel like they're the bad people. So I'm trying to figure out how to address that.
Yeah, so I would figure out a way to embed continuous improvement and feedback into your culture framework in some way. So put it into a value, put it into a behavior, and set the expectation with everyone that like we only get better when people see something and say something, or when people are, And then, I think there's a few ways to kind of get at that. One way would be to just almost start by having like now's actually a great time. We're at the end of the year. There's a couple of things, like, why don't we bring everybody together? Let's have a happy hour. And let's talk about all the things we want to see improved in 2022 as a team. And let's just create a big long list of these things. And then everybody can go in and vote on the ones that they think are the biggest priority. And we'll work on delegating that work to the teams to implement it. So that could be a really safe way to start it, and then say, hey, we want to make sure we're focused on continuous improvement as we grow and as we get bigger. This is actually now going to be part of behaviors that we expect from everyone on the team. And this is what that looks like. So you articulate it in your own words and language. And then have ongoing, maybe some periodic business and tech meetings where the whole point of the meeting is to evaluate, like, stop, start, continue, or, let's again create that list of what needs to be improved. And depending on your culture, another way you could come at this is, I don't even know if they still exist, like the Razzie Awards. Have you ever heard of them, where like, it's like, I think the Razzies are like, you basically give someone an award for something that was like not good, like for something like a failure. So you could have the tech team give the business team some Razzies, and you could have the business team give the tech team some Razzies to be like, what are the three, like, biggest failures that happened this year, and do it in a funny way. Like, in the last company that I worked for, we were doing them, and one of the trophies was like a giant nail, and it was like sarcastic, like you really nailed it, and they really didn't, but it was like, it was funny, everybody laughed, they were like, yeah, that was a lesson learned, and we move on. So if that's part of your way and approach, and you think you can have some humor embedded, that can be really effective as well.
I love both of the ideas. I think the first one will be adopted really easily in the company because we use a similar process for product roadmap.
Perfect.
Basically, like, different people get a vote and weighting. It's a pretty democratic process. The second one could totally work with the American team. I think would be really lost in translation for this.
It might be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when we started a company 8 years ago, the first hire that we had, he mistaken the word funny as meaning like more fun, meaning the emphasis of the word fun. And then so he's like, oh, I had a really funny weekend, like mean that I had like so much fun this weekend. And that has stuck. It's now 7 years in. The entire team describes it as funny, and nobody has corrected them because it's so cute. And so I think a lot of this like be lost in translation with this team.
Oh my gosh, yes, definitely be mindful of that. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very like, but also to add it to the mix, that team is no longer just purely just Spaniards. We now have a Ukrainian on team, someone from South Africa, 2 people from Ireland, like all from all over Europe. So I think a lot of random stuff, but I think the first one was something the engineers can really understand and the business team is used to doing. I think that's a great idea. Second one, I love the idea for the New York team. I think the Americans love it, the Europeans, I don't really get what's happening.
Like what's happening. Yeah. And something, just a cultural activity that maybe could be implemented. You should have some of the team in Spain do a team event where they are teaching Spanish to the English team, like kind of do a, like, hey, let's teach you some phrases. So maybe try to become more bilingual as part of the approach to just make everybody feel like they can be stretched in that way.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, the New York team all knows the word cerveza, but like,
right. Yeah, let's get them one step beyond that.
But thank you.
Yeah, of course. What else? Ariel, Caitlin, any questions?
This has been amazing so far. I love the very concrete recommendations you've been giving, Jess. It's like kind of like making my wheels turn on our own team and thinking through like how we can implement some of these things. So thank you so much. Jay, did you have another question? I saw it.
Oh, just saying it's super helpful.
Oh,
I
amazing.
didn't want to
Yes.
interrupt you, but
Oh no, no worries. Yeah, I'm just singing Jess's praises now. Yeah, if there's any last minute questions, feel free to unmute yourself. But this has just been like a jam-packed, incredible, tangible session. So thank you so much, Jess, for sharing all your knowledge with us. And thank you everyone for coming with such great questions and just being so present. And it's just always such an honor to learn alongside each other. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
amazing.
thanks for having